Adorama TV presents How They Do That, where we explore the world of professional photographers and share their techniques with you. Here's your host, Mark Wallace.
Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of How They Do That. I'm Mark Wallace. Well, on this episode we have an awesome photographer by the name of Ryan Brenizer. He is a wedding photographer in New York City, as well as a photojournalist. In fact, he has taken some awesome photos of celebrities and politicians, people like Muhammad Ali and Barack Obama on the campaign trail, and John McCain with Cardinal Egan, in fact, all three of those together. He also writes for the Adorama Learning Center, as well as doing workshops at Adorama. And he's got this awesome website at ryanbrenizer.com, and we have him on the show specifically because I was getting a ton of email from people asking me to explain the Brenizer technique. I didn't even know what that was at first until I looked it up, and I was very happy when I called Ryan and he said, hey, let's meet in Central Park and I'll just show you how to do this. And so without further ado, here is our chat in Central Park. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. We're here in awesome Central Park, and you actually shoot a billion engagement photos right on this spot where we're standing. Is that right?
Quite a few. I mean, with the volume that I do anywhere between 55 and almost 70 weddings a year.
Wow.
I pretty much do engagement shoots on any attractive street corner in Manhattan or Brooklyn.
Anywhere. And do you work exclusively? Well, first let's talk about the kind of photography that you do. You're a wedding photographer primarily?
I am. I'm almost 95% weddings these days. My background is journalism. This and the gray hair ages me more with every passing day, but I've covered 3 U.S. presidents, Muhammad Ali, the Pope, all sorts. Photography has taken me to a lot of really interesting places, and I've met a lot of really interesting people. But for more than 5 years, the bulk of my work and the bulk of my passion is weddings.
So with the president and Muhammad Ali and all that, were you a photojournalist to begin with?
Yeah, I started out in newspapers. That's where I covered Clinton and Bush for newspapers. And now I still do corporate work, a lot of events, charities, things like that. And that's where I actually was the exclusive non-campaign photographer allowed near McCain and Obama before the 2008 election. And it looks like they've already booked me for the next one.
Oh, that is awesome.
Whoever it's going to be. Yeah.
All right, maybe I can tag along. I'd love to see that. So how do you get from shooting presidents and athletes and legends really to now you're shooting weddings and around Manhattan? Is that a decision that you're like for stress or for fun? Or how did that happen?
Well, I had the style that I loved, and I had been working on, and I knew that I love people with emotion and telling stories really about everyday life. I admire war photographers and so many different people who go around the world, but some of the things that's been most fascinating to me is just stories about family, stories about people, stories about the stuff that happens every day and personal relationships. And like a lot of people who haven't seen the industry a lot, especially years ago, I didn't have that great put much value on wedding photography. You kind of picture the old guy, just shooting at like F-16,
right.
and that turn and smile for the camera. But I ran across the Wedding Photojournalists Association website, and it blew me away. I realized there was a market for people who want to tell stories as well as show people off. And I jumped in with both feet right from there, and it's been more than 225 weddings later. I love it more than ever.
Oh wow, I couldn't do it. I've tried shooting weddings. I just don't have the whatever it takes. I don't have it.
It takes a very certain kind of personality. You kind of have to love chaos, right?
Yeah.
And like making sense of it.
And weddings.
Yes. Yeah. You gotta love hearing a lot of Lady Gaga music.
Right.
And
going to receptions and all that kind of stuff. That's just not me. But I know a lot of people that excel at that. And the other thing that I think is great about your work is you tend to find, and I sort of understand the photos that you take, because you tend to find those little elements, the small details that really make a wedding stand out.
Right.
The little details. Well, that's another thing I think is very interesting. A lot of photographers that I've talked to in the past, they're brand new. I mean, 2 or 3 years old as photographers and cutting their teeth now as wedding photographers. But you've got some experience, and the neat thing about that is you're giving that experience to others through your workshops.
Yes.
So tell us about the workshops, because there are a lot of workshops out there, and I think yours sort of stand out because of the experience that you have. So what do you have to offer?
Yeah, so I mean, basically, the main thing that I try and offer is the experience of somebody who's still out there shooting all the time. Again, this year I've done almost 70 weddings, and again, these are not not cheap weddings. So I'm out there, I'm working with clients, I'm seeing what's still in the industry right now, and so the trade-off is, of course, I can't do too many workshops because I'm shooting, but it really takes that experience. And then the other thing is that I have absolutely no secrets about what I do, from anything from the business to the photography, because I believe that if your business is based on secrets, then you're vulnerable to somebody just coming along and find out that secret. But if your business is based on just working really hard at being a better photographer, being a better business person, and being better for your clients, that's something that you can share whatever you want, and if you're still going to have a great business.
That is awesome, and I love that. So I totally buy into the whole open source photography teaching methodology, because
Absolutely.
I'm never going to be you and you're never going to be me. So it doesn't matter how much I tell you about what I do, you still have a different vision and style and practice and discipline than I do, which is the joy of photography, I think.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that you have sort of perfected is something that is called the Brenizer technique.
Yes.
And I didn't know much about this until I just got a barrage of emails asking for me to explain it. And I'm like, I don't know how to do it, but I know the guy that does. And so here we are in Central Park. Can you show me how you do this technique? Well, first explain what it is.
Okay. Basically, it's taking the simple idea of doing a large panorama, but instead of using it for just a lot of megapixels or just to have a really wide frame, it's taking what's fundamentally happening when you're doing a panorama. You have the same lens, the same everything. What's changing is that you're overlapping your sensor. And if you've gone from a tiny point and shoot to a DSLR or from a DX to an FX, when you have a bigger sensor, it's a lot easier to get a really shallow depth of field.
Yeah.
So if you can make that sensor gigantic with the same lens with a fast prime, then you can have almost as shallow depth of field as you want, shooting with like an f1 0.4 lens, basically.
That's awesome. And I've seen you do this, and you do it really fast, which is awesome.
Yeah.
I've tried it, and I didn't have success. I only did it once, but let's do that. So let's do a really quick transition. I'll be the model,
okay,
and let's have you shoot me here in Central Park, and then we'll show you guys exactly how you do this awesome technique.
Great, thanks so much.
All right, now I'm your model, so
Excellent.
let's tell everybody how to do this.
Perfect. So the main thing in creating a compelling photo out of this is to, even though it's kind of a new technique, is to go back to some very old techniques, which is pre-visualization, right? Because none of your individual photos is going to look like the photo that you want to end up with. And it's like putting a puzzle piece together. It's maybe been a long time with DSLR since anyone has gone like this, right? But you want to know exactly where your corners are. Otherwise, you may just go off into some really interesting direction where like the foliage is, but when you crop it, you got to have a good rectangle or a good square or something that you can actually crop and make into a photo, unless you're going for some kind of jaggedy edged kind of composition. So here, I've got you, and I've got this foliage. It's going to look really great when I shoot it with a really shallow depth of field. So I'm finding my corners, and I want to fill that in. I don't want to leave any holes. So I've got that in my mind, and now just for the lighting, I'm just going to have you bring your left shoulder forward just a little bit.
I'm
That's
the world's
great.
worst model. Here I am.
No, trust me, absolutely not. I could tell some stories.
Okay.
So just looking right here, I've got my corners. Now, I do this a lot with people. Of course, people are not the ideal subjects for a panorama. This is even better for still life. But with people, first I want to tell you, just hold relatively still. You don't have to, it's not like a long exposure where if you move a molecule, it's going to make a big difference. But I want to shoot the parts that move first. And I want to get maybe a few frames of your face, so I got a great expression to work from for the first frame, and then fill it out and be very methodical. So you'll see that I'm working through the rectangle that I've already got in my mind, but I'm going to start with your face. So looking right here, perfect. There we go. The great thing about photography is that even nervous laughter just looks like laughter. There we go. And now I've locked my exposure, I've locked my shutter speed, my aperture, everything, so that each frame that I take now is going to be exactly the same. Now I don't have my white balance locked because I'm shooting in RAW and it's not actually baked into the frame. But if you're shooting in JPEG, you want to bake in your white balance. And in any case, when you process these, you want to make sure that the white balance of every photo is the same also. So your ISO, your aperture, your shutter speed, and your white balance, and your focus, all the same from shot to shot.
All right, can I move?
Absolutely.
All right, so white balance, focus, exposure, everything all set. And then you're going to throw these into Photoshop? Is that how you do this?
Yeah, Photoshop is good. For some random reason, I find that CS3 actually works better than CS4 or CS5.
Okay.
But any program that does well with panoramas. I use AutoPano Pro a lot because, of course, I do a lot of panoramas, and you can batch them, right? So maybe if I shoot 10 of these in a day, I can go home, I can load them all in, and then go get a cup of coffee or something and wait for it to finish.
Get it all done.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us here in
Thank
Central
you
Park.
so much. Thank you. Excellent.
Well, there's my famous photo that Ryan took, and you can tell I'm not much of a model, but you get an idea of how to do this awesome technique. We want you to try it out and maybe post your results to the Adorama TV Flickr group. I have put right here underneath me the link to that, so you can go and try that out yourself and then post your results. We want to see what you have. And I also want to mention that Ryan had so much to talk about because he has a lot of experience not only with weddings, which he shoots, as he said, tons of those every year, but as a photojournalist. So if we can, hopefully in the future we're going to have him back so we can talk about a lot of the other things that he does because he's just that cool. Well, thanks so much for joining us for this episode. Remember, you can see all of the past episodes of How They Do That and just zip over to the Adorama Learning Center. We've got them all posted there, or just subscribe to our YouTube channel or subscribe in iTunes and you won't miss a single episode of Adorama TV. Well, thanks again for joining us, and I'll see you again next time.
This episode is brought to you by Adorama TV. Visit the Adorama Learning Center where you'll find photography tips and techniques, links to the gear used in this episode, and related videos. For all the latest photography, video, and computer gear, visit Adorama.com. And the next time you're in New York City, visit our store located on 18th Street between 5th and 6th Avenue.